Welcome and thanks for joining us on episode number 275 of the Financially Independent Teachers Podcast. If you think your story could help other educators and you'd be willing to come on the show, please check out our webpage at financiallyindependentteachers.com and fill out the form to come on the show. Man, I can't even tell you, listeners, how excited I am for today's episode. I feel like a little kid in a candy store or something. And I shouldn't feel this way because I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan. And as we're recording this episode, they just got beat by the Knicks, and the Knicks ended up winning the NBA Finals. So I should be like really depressed and, hungover from like a big sports loss. But man, I love having North Carolina teachers on the show because there are so many naysayers out there. And again, I do want to be clear that this does not mean that I support what the North Carolina legislature has been doing. It doesn't mean that I don't believe that North Carolina teachers shouldn't be paid for their worth. Trust me, I'm a North Carolina teacher. I would take an $85,000 salary tomorrow and I would never cry about it. But it's just amazing to know that we've had a few handfuls of North Carolina teachers that, even though they are North Carolina educators, they are still making it happen. And again, we're all in different circumstances. Some of us are single, some are married, some are divorced, some don't have kids, some have three kids, some have kids with special needs and other things. So we understand that this isn't a blanket thing. We're not saying that every North Carolina teacher should be in the same position as others, but when there is a North Carolina teacher couple and they're willing to come share and they're almost net worth millionaires, man, my ears perk up. And I feel like I'm hanging out with a couple of celebrities. So John and Lauren, thank you guys so much for being a teacher duo that's willing to come on together, a husband and wife couple, and talk about how you've made this happen.
Cool. We're glad to be here.
Glad to be here.
And we're even like neighbors. I didn't even know this. They filled out the form to come on the show, and for whatever reason, I assumed that they lived near Chicago, Illinois, and they're like, yeah, like I teach at White Oak, like where my wife went to high school, and they probably live 5 miles up the road from where I'm at right now. So let's get into this whole thing. So we're in the South, so I'm going to be a Southern gentleman, and we're going to start with Lauren. No pressure. We're going to start with you. If you don't mind just telling us a little bit about your career in education, how long you've been doing it, what you teach, and that kind of thing.
Well, I just finished my 14th year of teaching. I've That's all I've done since I graduated from college, and I teach music at the elementary level, and absolutely love what I do.
Wow, that would be a lot of fun. It's so funny. I was in children's church today. Once a month, I volunteer in children's church out there with the kindergarten through fifth grade. So it's a pretty big span. There's normally 30 to 40 kids in there. And it's so funny. One of the questions that came up today is like, hey, who here is, we're talking about God-given talent and abilities. Like, who here is an artist? Who here is a musician? They're all like raising their hand and they're so excited. But it seems like once you get to middle school, then it's like hands barely go up because now people are worried about getting judged and their peers. And then you get to high school and then it's like, oh gosh, like, no, I stink. I'm terrible. So you're at that fun age where everybody still thinks they're the next Picasso or the next Beethoven, and they're
Yes,
all super confident in their abilities, and every day's a party. Then we move
exactly.
on over to John. You're also involved in music, but you're at one of those other levels if you want to talk about that.
Yes, I'm the one of the band directors. We're blessed to have two directors at White Oak High School, and I'm been there for 7 years, and I also finished year 14. I did 7 years in Elizabeth City at Pasquotank High School, and that's actually the other high school in the same county where I grew up. So I kind of spread my wings a little bit 7 years ago to move to the big city, and uh, have have really enjoyed it. It's been a great experience working in Onslow County.
I've enjoyed my 20 years in Onslow County. And are you a native to North Carolina, Lauren, or are you a transplant like I am?
Yeah, no, I'm from right outside Charlotte in Union County.
Gotcha. Okay. So, John, I post a lot. I don't know if you're on the Financially Independent Teachers Facebook page, but I post a lot on there about, local supplements. Onslow County, where us three individuals teach, we have a 12% local supplement. So when anybody looks at that North Carolina pay scale and they're like, oh my God, that is terrible.
Hmm.
We know that it's really not that for our county. I'm not saying it's much better, but we do have that 12% stipend. So if you're somebody that's making 50 grand a year on the North Carolina teacher pay scale, well, it's going to look like $56,000, really. If you're making 60, then it's going to obviously be like 67, 68. The old county that you were in near in your hometown or home county Is the supplement here better than it was there? And does that make a difference?
Yeah, the supplement it's kind of an interesting thing in my specific situation. I'll get to that in a second. Like the supplement there, and this was 7 years ago. I believe it was like maybe $2,000 at the most. I think it could have even been like $1,500. So we get like a nice $800 Christmas bonus before taxes, and then we get another little bit at the end of the school year. But the 12%, that makes a huge difference because basically it's like you actually get more than a month's pay at the end of the year, so you really only have to save for 1 month of being gone in the summer. And so once we did once we found out we were getting the supplement, it's like, well, great. Now we have more monthly budget money, not having to save as much in the summer. But it was a little bit of a weird transition because, and every county's different. So like, I was a 12-month position at Pasquotank. So I was actually paid year round my teacher's salary. I didn't collect leave in the summer months because that was basically just a stipend, a cash stipend paid by the county for whatever my salary was. And like, I mean, we have our health insurance year round, so that wasn't affected by anything. But initially, I was a little worried if I would end up having a pay cut coming to Onslow because we're only 10-month band directors here. We get a band director supplement, which is pretty good. But I was a little worried about that transition from year round, 12-month pay to 10-month pay. But it the local supplement and the band director supplement more than made up for that at the time. But it's just interesting how um, positions are funded kind of throughout the state. There's a wide range of payment schedule type things going on.
For sure. So you guys have both been doing it 14 years. And again, I just can't barely contain my excitement. The fact that we have a North Carolina married teacher couple here. One of my best friends, him and his wife are both North Carolina teachers, also around year 14. I try to tell North Carolina teachers, okay, it might not be the sexiest career. When we have friends from college that are attorneys or they're accountants or whatever, but you guys, it seems like, you're in your mid 30s. So you started right out of the gate, right out of college, 22,
Mhm.
23 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
You guys are going to be able to retire probably with 30 years, not even including sick leave at 52, maybe 53 years old. And with sick leave, you could go out even earlier. And
Hmm.
the cool thing about North Carolina, there's a lot that's wrong, but there's some things that are right, is that you can immediately start collecting on that pension as early as 50 years old. You guys, and we can talk more about the advanced degrees and national board stuff. You're probably in your early 50s, each going to have a pension somewhere between 35 and $40,000 a piece. So you're looking, think of the people out there that when you're 52, you guys are going to be making, like, let's just say $80,000 a year doing jack, what.
Yeah.
Literally, you could sit on the couch and you could pull those guitars off the wall I see in the background. You guys could sit around and play music all day long and make 80 grand a year. And
Hmm.
that's before you even lift a finger. I mean, how good does that feel as a North Carolina teacher couple to know that that 80 grand a year is coming in the next 15 to 17 years?
Yeah, it's a big blessing to know that that the state is gonna kind of take care of us in that way. And um, it's also in some ways easy to kind of maybe rely on that a little bit and not feel the urgency to invest. But it's also nice knowing that we'll have that safety net regardless of what happens. I'd like to think we'll be more than set up for retirement, so all that will basically be gravy on the biscuit. But it's good to have it either way.
Yeah, you look at, I don't know, we'll get more into, your financial background and how this whole thing got started, but for those who might not be familiar with a thing called the 4% rule, I don't know if you guys have heard of that before or not, but the 4% rule is basically what most financial experts would say is if you're in the private sector and you have, say, just a 401k, you can pull 4% of whatever that balance is every year, and that portfolio should last you for 30 plus years. So to make it
Mhm.
easy, if somebody had $1 million in the private sector, that accountant friend of ours or that attorney friend from college, if they had $1 million, 4% of $1 million is $40,000 a year. And that's how much they could pull out every year to essentially live off of and create their own bank, so to speak. But you
Mhm.
guys are going to make $80,000 a year. So literally your North Carolina pensions alone is the equivalent at probably 50 to 52 or 3 years old of having $2 million in an investment account if we were private sector employees. That just blows my mind. And I see teachers all the time posting on the North Carolina Teachers United Facebook page that we're members of together.
Mhm.
And when I say, hey, your pension's probably going to be 35, 40,000 a year, they're like, that is terrible. I gave 30 years to the state and I can't believe I'm only going to make 40,000 a year the rest of my life. How are we supposed to live off that? I don't know if they realize how powerful that is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I do wonder though, like with the knowledge of investing and things that I have now, I do wonder like what I could do if they just gave us that money to invest.
For sure, for sure. That is always the caveat is like, if you let me keep in North Carolina 6% of our paychecks, including like that stipend we're getting ready to get
Right.
here at
Yeah.
the end of June. I know this comes out after, but 6% of that will go to the North Carolina pension system. 6% of your band directors pay,
You're
6%
right.
of my coaching stipend. Those all go in. If there was the option, would you rather keep your entire paycheck and invest it in the 457 401k and have no pension? I definitely feel confident that I'm disciplined enough to do that and make it go further than the pension. But I'd say, considering 80% of Americans have less than $100,000 invested when they retire, most people probably do need that pension. And it scares me to think, what are all these people in the private sector going to do without pensions now that our
Hmm.
country has pretty much transitioned away from them, except for a few industries? So, man, you guys are going to be killing it. So 80 grand, we're just going to call it 80 grand in your early 50s. And then when you factor in Social Security in North Carolina, we pay into that. Let's say that you're each going to make 25,000 a year in Social Security. That's another 50 grand. So when you're in your 60s, you guys are easily going to be making probably $130,000 a year doing nothing. And again, if we go back to that 4% rule, now that's like you have $3 million invested in the market when you factor in the pension and Social Security. So yeah, I'm over here just super happy about that. What do you think, Lauren, about the future numbers? Again, not sexy now with our salaries, but it will pay off in the end.
Yeah, I think it's a great blessing to have that and to know that we do have that little cushion coming to us. It's certainly not the only thing we want to have. We want to be invested other places and have just different ways of making money for ourselves. But to know that that's a solid investment and to know that the longer that we are teaching and working, like we're paying into that over the course of our careers and then it comes back to us once we retire. That's really exciting. And to have that option to be able to retire so early and to be able to live off of it, it is exciting. It's worth it, even if we
Hmm.
don't make as much now.
Yeah.
Let's throw one other twist into this is we know that, probably the next, you're in your mid 30s by 40 years old, depending on the market and, real estate, you guys own a house and stocks and stuff. By 40, you guys could easily be net worth millionaires. And they say generally the rule of 72 that, your investments double every 7 to 10 years. So if you hit the $1 million mark, this is no pensions, no social security. If you're millionaires at 40, that means by 50, you're probably worth 2 million. And by 60, you might be worth 3 or 4 million. Then you've got the $130,000 of income from your pension and social security. And everybody who's listening right now says, okay, where's John and Laura going to take us on a vacation? You
Yeah.
guys are set up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're definitely looking forward to having some time to ourselves once we retire and just being able to do whatever we want is going to be, having that financial freedom and not having to worry
Mhm.
about it is going to be really nice.
Now, we're talking about retirement a little bit, but we will backtrack and we'll get into how did this even happen as far as, being on track to be millionaires by 40 as North Carolina teachers. Have you guys talked about the future because you started so early out of college? You don't have kids, so you haven't had to use, like, I'm guessing, a ton of sick leave. That's building up probably in the background.
Hmm.
Are you guys people that could truly be happy. I was just talking to a North Carolina teacher, a retired one, and she's like, you know what, Fly, I can't sit still. And my wife and I were like looking at each other like we could. I was like, are you going to work in your 60s? She's like, yeah, I can't just sit around. Do you guys see yourself being those people that, okay, I'm going to retire from North Carolina, then I'll go teach at the private school, or then I'm going to go work at the college? Or do you guys see yourself as maybe using your musical skills for maybe lessons on the side just to keep you busy? Or do you guys want to go full? We're going to get a beach house, we're going to get a mountain house, we're going to travel. What does it look like for John and Laura with these millions you're going to have in your 50s?
You want to start or?
Um, we've had a lot of different ideas about different things that we could do. We've hypothetically talked about like the beach house or something, but in more serious, it really would be nice to kind of retire from what we do currently. And then we've talked about like he does woodworking on the side, so being able to do like what is a side hobby now and grow it into an actual working business that he can kind of have some income from. Or I've talked about like doing something totally different. I've always liked being a librarian or something with history or just something different that you could have kind of part time and do something to be around people. But that's different than what we do. And so being able to kind of prepare for that side of things, but then the opportunities to travel and to see different places is also really important for us.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
and
gotten really excited about these numbers here, right? 2 million and a million and 130,000. Don't let it get twisted here if you're listening. Most of the people that come on our show and most of the people that are into like the Dave Ramsey stuff or the fire movement, it's really not about mass accumulation and greed. It's about what they're talking about right now. They're just simply trying to put stuff away for their future so then you can follow your passion project. So
Yep.
you don't feel like, man, I really want to get out at year 30 and I'm miserable and the kids are exhausting and I'm stressed out and I'm having panic attacks. But man, I've got to teach another 10 years because I never saved, but I've got to build my pension up. This is all about freedom. It's, about being able to bless and help other people along the way if they need it. Sure, the numbers are exciting. They're fun to talk about, but it's what John and Laura are discussing right here. It doesn't mean that they're just going to sit around and be bums all day. John
hmm
can take what is a passion project on his side and, he can choose to take on projects or not to choose to take on projects. And if Lauren really loves history and she wants to work at the new Marine Corps Museum that we have in Jacksonville and Onslow County, if she wants to do that 3 days a week and give back to her community, sure, she can maybe make, 15 to $18,000 a year and not have so much stress that like sometimes we have in the classroom. That's what this is all about. Do you guys agree with me?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wonder some days if I maybe should have been um, an entrepreneur. Like I'm really into business and really enjoy like thinking of like ways to make money and things of that nature. So like I'm looking forward to having a large safety net to explore like, business ventures of, either the woodworking thing or like I'd love to get into real estate one day. Like I just because my time is so busy with being a band director, that's kind of kept me on the sidelines in that regard. But just having the free time to be able to really explore my interests and try new things in the business world is what I'm excited about. Plus, like with being a woodworker, I'm excited to like build things on my property and like just work on projects and like just whatever however I want to spend my time being productive and just seeing what I can accomplish with all that free time is going to be great.
That's awesome. So let's go back to the beginning here. You guys have been married for 4 years. You're in your mid 30s, no kids. We're approaching the net worth $1 million status or whatever. How did we get here? Was this something, John, you just mentioned like, I love what I do, but there's a piece of me that almost feels like I've got to scratch this itch of, the entrepreneurship and the making other money and things like that. Which, by the way, if you got your real estate license, you can do it online now in 6 weeks,
Mm,
during nights. And man, we have a teacher at Jacksonville. He's a TA, and
hmm
he sold 4 houses so far this year, and I think he's made like $16,000 on the side.
Wow.
And those deals probably took him less than 10 hours altogether. So with the network that you have within like all the families with the band and other teachers, if you had your real estate license and you became just a go-to guy that only even worked with educators, you could probably supplement your income by 15 to 30,000 a year. But how did
Oh.
we get here? Did you guys both have the same money mindset, or is this something that has grown together since you've gotten married? Who wants to start this one?
So we had a very different upbringing as far as like financial education, but sort of similar in some ways. My family, my dad's a pastor, and my mom is a school secretary, and they did a good job of providing for us. But money other than like tithing your 10% and you want to be sure to save your money so you have it when you need it, but there wasn't a whole lot of like here's exactly how you do it and what it looks like to have a budget and manage your finances and everything. And so I very much fell into the normal trap of getting a car payment and if you want something, you buy it, on a credit card, whether you can afford it or not. And so I kind of started out very much in the hole. I had um, I bought a Jeep Grand Cherokee when I got my first like real job teacher paycheck. And I think my car payment, I was paying extra to pay it off early, but I think my minimum payment was like $500 a month. And I was paying 800 just to try to like, pay it off a little early. Um, but yeah, I remember thinking like, well, credit card, that's just like a subscription for like buying the things you want. Like, as long as you like make a payment on it, like, it's,
Or
just
forgiven.
yeah, it's whatever. Like as long as you can make the minimum, like I'm very, very blessed in that like I don't know if they are still like this, but like, the biggest credit limit I could get was like $1,000, and then I think they upped it to like 1,800 or something like that. So like I never had the means to like really like get it completely out of control like some people have found themselves in. So my mess was pretty easy to clean up once I figured it out. The church that I was attending in Elizabeth City taught Financial Peace by Dave Ramsey. And I had another really good friend of mine that helped me sort of really understand that like there comes a time where you just really need to get a hold of your finances and like you've always been able to figure it out in the past. But as life goes on, it's going to get harder and harder and harder to figure it out. Like you got to really know what your expenses are, what your income is, and like figure out what you can and can't spend money on. Um, so with his guidance and like just speaking into my life about like um, needing to grow in maturity in that area, and then coupled with taking Financial Peace at Town South in Elizabeth City, it gave me a foundation to really kind of launch that journey of paying off all my consumer debt. Um, so it took
You're at what
me,
age probably when you're doing the FPU classes for Dave Ramsey? Is this mid 20s or?
yeah, because I'd been teaching for a few years at that point. So yeah, probably 25-ish or so.
It's
Um,
amazing what FPU can do. My wife and I, we did that at our church when we were about 25. And I was just thinking, like, when we watched it, I was like, how did I never learn this stuff in school? Like,
yeah.
we're both young professionals, making decent money or whatever. I didn't know about the different type of insurances. It was almost like it created these guardrails for you on the highway or something that it doesn't mean that you're not going to make mistakes, but at least the road that you're supposed to be on. And you had
hmm
like an elementary school education on finances that none of us got when we graduated college.
Right. Yeah. So um, paying off the consumer debt was the first big step, and then um, the other thing that happened was I had the opportunity to um, sorry, I lost my train of thought where I was going. um, when I moved down here to Jacksonville, there was a fundraiser that we did for the band that I worked at back at Pasquotank. It's a fireworks stand, like if you see the tents in Walmart parking
Yep.
lots, TNT fireworks. So we did that as a fundraiser for the band for the longest time while I was teaching there, and then when I left, the parents and the new director, they just decided that it was just too difficult logistically for them to continue to do that. So um, you can either do it as a fundraiser for a nonprofit, or you can also just be a contractor for TNT and just operate the tent for yourself. So once I had that opportunity, that's when things really started to take off, and I was able to make a bunch of money in the summer.
Wait. So you were the crazy fireworks tent guy that had to like, you're responsible for the fireworks like 24/7. You
Yep.
got to guard them. You got to sleep there. Like people can come steal it. I mean, it's crazy. I've heard
Oh yeah.
bizarre stories of the fireworks tents and what,
Yeah.
I thought about it before. I heard that you can make really good money. I heard it's a really rough 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But how much are you making being the crazy fireworks guy?
Well, not every tent is the same. Your results may vary. But I'm and again, I don't want to get into too many specifics, but like our tent is uniquely positioned just being across the border from Chesapeake and Virginia Beach, because they don't allow any fireworks sales. So all of those people come into North Carolina and buy the legal fireworks from us. But um, I pretty much am able to make a couple months' salary in 2 weeks.
And you're still doing this?
Yeah, we leave next Thursday.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
Wow. So this
yeah.
is 2 weeks of summer. Every year you're gonna go do this tent. Lauren, are you helping with the tent as well? Is this a like
Yes.
is this like a night watchman? Like one of you, is working and the other one sleeps and you trade off? How does this go
No,
down? And
we work together during the daytime, and then we have someone that sleeps at the tent, or like if we don't have that person, then he'll sleep out of it. But yeah, we do it together, and it's a very unique experience. It's something that we're very blessed to have, because it does provide that income for us and gives us something that we can somewhat rely on. It's obviously flexible depending on the season, but it's really a nice opportunity to get to meet people, get to talk to people, get to help them out, and just do something fun. And it's a lot of hard work being there 12 hours a day or more in the
yeah, I
heat.
mean these
But
North Carolina summer days, I'm sure,
yes.
there's no AC out there.
Yeah.
And the humidity, I mean, just this week we've been hitting 105, 107 every day with the heat index. I'm sure you lose a little bit of weight. You have to stay hydrated or you could pass out. I want to know
Yeah.
about the sleeping arrangements. When you say you sleep at the tent, like, do you literally like roll out like a blow up mattress and you're like outside, or do you like have a van that you sleep in right next to the tent?
So like early in my days, like that's what I was doing, just rolling out an air mattress and um, get one of those like little mosquito repelling devices, just to keep the mosquitoes off of you. And then you wake up and deflate the air mattress, roll up the sides, and that's what a majority of people do. Because the tent, generates the revenue that it does. I have the margin to be able to pay somebody to sleep. Um, I operate two tents. I operate one in Elizabeth City, and then I also operate another tent in Moyock, North Carolina, which is in Currituck County, a couple counties away. Um, so that one is the one that I stay at, and then I have someone staying at the one in Elizabeth City. But actually, just this year, I invested in a cargo trailer that has air conditioning in it. So I'm going to set up some like motion detectors and stuff so that I don't have to be like actually inside the tent. But that's like the super bougie version.
So you rolled up your sleeves, you put in the hard work, and now it's like, hey, okay, let me make this a little bit easier. Uh, Sounds like that's when Lauren came in the picture here. I'm
Yeah,
just
that was
messing. My wife would be like, we're getting the air conditioned thing, we're doing the bougie thing. So
yeah.
Lauren, You grew up different according to John. Like he had the $500 car payment. He was living life, living his best life, running up $500 on a credit card, pay it off. Luckily, he couldn't go over the $1,000 limit or whatever. Where are you at before you meet financially? You're a teacher, and you're a music teacher. Are you doing things differently than John?
I was, and like you said, we were very different, but then also somewhat the same as well. I grew up in a very money conscious household. I grew up in a household where we saved everything and we didn't spend. And any type of expense, like if the air conditioning went out or the refrigerator went out, was always a big deal for my family. And it was interesting growing up because my dad was an electrical engineer, so he was making quite a bit of money. My mother was a teacher assistant in private school, so she didn't make very much at all. But they were always savers and always instilled that need to save in me. So as I was growing up, I never did anything with the dog sitting or the babysitting money that I had. I always saved everything that I possibly could. That money went into like a little piggy bank, and then that became my first bank account. And then after I started teaching, it was the same way. Like money would come into my account, and then unless it was a bill or groceries or something that had to be paid, it just kind of sat. And I left it as best I could alone. The other thing that was instilled in me was the need to start early with saving for retirement. And at the time, I didn't understand what that meant because to me, it was very stressful as a 21-year-old out on my own to have bills to pay and not kind of know like that I was going to be okay because I didn't have any way of budgeting. I wasn't taught how to budget. I just knew to save. And so it was very stressful when you did have something like that to know how to kind of prepare for that. But that's one of the things that we figured out in our marriage was the importance of talking through a budget and planning out every detail of our income so that way we knew where everything went, and then having an emergency fund so then when something does come up, it's not I mean, it's stressful in its own way, but it's not stressful financially because we know we have money set aside to cover that.
It's more of an
The other,
annoyance at that point. It's like,
Right.
yes.
we have this $3,000 emergency. It's like that fly at, a picnic or whatever that keeps landing on your potato salad or whatever. It's like, get out of here. It keeps coming back.
Yes.
It's really not going to kill you or hurt you, but it stinks because you have worked hard to build that up. But it's not
Right.
a disaster, life or death type thing like it is for some.
Right. Right. The other thing I was going to say is I also grew up sort of what some people would consider privileged, but it actually can be a hindrance as well. Because my dad had money and could cover things like my college was paid for, and then he encouraged me to do my master's degree so I could make a little bit more, which I did. But like having those things covered, it helped from the financial aspect of things. But on the same token, I wasn't encouraged as a teenager to go get a job or to do anything that taught me how to make a car payment or make a cell phone payment or do some of those things. So it was a very rude awakening as an adult working my first real job to kind of know how to manage that without having that underlying support and assistance. But another blessing in that was when I was a junior in college, my dad bought my first car. So it was completely paid off. And so up until December of this year, when we ended up being able to gift it to someone, I had that car. I had it for 15 years. And so when we
Wow.
got married or as a young teacher, it was something I didn't have to worry about. It was something that I could afford to, get it inspected and do the maintenance on it. But it wasn't even now, like it wasn't the most expensive car in the world. It was something that worked really well and I could use and enjoy for all that time too.
Yeah, what a blessing, right? I think one of the biggest blessings can be providing that college education for your kids or,
Mhm.
that car that whether it's brand new or used or the car that the kid got to drive through high school or college. Like, hey, we're gonna gift this to you. It sounds like you and I grew up very similar. My dad was an engineer. He worked at, General Motors and was like a factory guy, blue collar, but very same thing where they said, hey, your job is to be a student, not be an ass, don't get in trouble and play your sport, which I ended up doing in college. They didn't make me get a job. I didn't learn responsibility on that side. And when I did have a job, it was just like cutting grass with buddies, which is great, but it's
Mhm.
not like you have to clock in and clock out and learn how to manage paychecks. It was like, hey, let's go, start this mulch job for this lady down the street. Let's start at 7 in the morning so we can be on the boat by noon, and then we just get a wad of cash and we go blow it at the mall or whatever. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is an interesting perspective that I haven't really touched on fit a whole lot. Is people talk about privilege and you grew up this way and that way or whatever, but there can also be blind spots growing up in that situation because, hey, I'm seeing mom and dad are doing really well and they're doing a great job taking care of me, and they're not letting me just be a mooch. But we're blessed to be in a position where I don't have to get a job. We all know, especially John, with us being in the high school, there are kids in our county that, I've got a kid right now that's from South America, Central South America, and he literally doesn't speak much English. And as soon as we got done with school at 2:10, by 3 o'clock, he was a cook at one of the local restaurants here in Jacksonville. And he worked 6 days a week from 3 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night,
Wow.
6 days a week. And by the way, he owns his own house and he's a landlord in his home country of Guatemala. He
Wow.
purchased a house for 50,000 US dollars. This kid amazes me. I'm like, you're doing better than most of the teachers here on campus, and you're in school. You're in school from 6:55 in the morning until 2:10. You barely speak English, and then you go work. I had a girl in class that spoke very fluent Spanish. So one day, what we did for an entire 90-minute period was the whole class used her as an interpreter, and he taught us lessons that he's learned about hard work and real estate. What an
Wow.
amazing thing! But
Yeah.
anyway, um, we all grow up different. And even that kid coming from Guatemala in poverty, he views America as the American dream and he loves it. So you guys then joined forces. You grew up a little bit different. I'm guessing you meet here in Onzo County, if I had to guess, context clues here. You meet in Onzo County, you get married. Were there any bumps along the way with how you viewed finances? I'm not trying to stir up any marital strife here, but how did you guys work through those things and like kind of what are the systems you have now in place? Like I'm really curious about the fireworks stand. Like, is that for like vacations? Is it earmarked for Roth IRAs? Let's talk about the blending of the two lives.
It was a bit challenging when we first, well, before we got married, really. Like, I knew that he was the one long before he proposed. And we were having a real serious conversation about finances. And my parents have their finances separate. So my mom has always had her separate little account. My dad has his stuff. And he will always complain about my mom not putting it in something that's making more interest or doing, but yet they never share accounts. And so when we were talking, we were talking specifically about our separate houses because he had his house and I had my house. One of the things was he was like, I think I might rent the house. Like, if I can't sell it, maybe I'll rent it. And I remember
As the
telling him, like,
entrepreneur.
yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
that's fine for you to do with your house, but I don't want to do that with my house if we move out. And it was like his and mine. And so that was really hard for me because we do have joint banking. And it was hard for me with some of my dad, like I said, had encouraged me to invest in things. So I had some different accounts open. Like one was with the credit union that my grandfather worked at. He had opened an account when I was little and I had continued to put money in. And then one was through my dad's work at Duke. I could open a Duke Premier Notes account. So I had money in different places. And then I also was blessed with an inheritance from my grandfather. So I had all these things that I'd not touched that were just kind of setting aside. But to share them was hard, or to open the door to how do we have this life together where we're combined was challenging for me. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I think for me, like it's funny that cause we both. I looked at her when you mentioned that because that was the exact same story I was thinking about. Like, talking about what to do, like with our houses and things like that. And she's like, that's fine to do with your house, but if we end up moving out of my house, I don't want to do that. And I was like, well, it's gonna be our house. Our house is. She's like, well, I mean, yeah, but like you'll have yours and I'll have mine. I was like, if we're gonna be, together, we're gonna be, together and just, working through that mutual understanding and mutual trust with, I mean, with everything, but it becomes really, um, evident when talking about money, like just having a united mentality and a sense of oneness on everything was challenging initially, but I knew from the beginning that would be able to find common ground and be able to work through that. And that's the other like thing that I'm most thankful of learning to budget is like a lot of people think it's um like a restrictive sort of thing, but it really like it is such a powerful communication tool between spouses, and it it's definitely for single people it's a powerful tool as well. But just the ability to like have that on paper and just like using it as a jumping off point to really discuss what our goals are for the month, for the year. We try to have a budget meeting every week. Sometimes it ends up being 2 weeks, and like in the middle of marching band season, it might end up being like right at the end of the month when we're getting ready to start the next month. But the goal is always to try to talk about it weekly. To review transactions, making sure like we've got enough money in the grocery fund, or like something came up with the car, do we need to move something around? But like just having that tool to be able to have open dialogue and open communication about finances, I think is really um, one of the pillars of our marriage, that's helped us work together so well.
Yeah, they say communication in a relationship is so critical. And the number one cause of divorce, according to research, besides getting married, is financial issues, right? So if you're having these budgeting meetings or you're talking about goals, if you guys know together, hey, it's January 1st, let's set our goals for this year. We want to get our emergency fund to 10 grand. And then you check back in, it's tax season and you get some money back. It's, hey, now we're up to 2,500. And then you get the band, you know, stipend or whatever. Hey, now we're up to 3,500. And then you get the two Wanzo County 12% supplements in June. And then the low wealth supplements that we're also getting this year. Hey, guys, we're up to 8,000. And when you're working together and you're moving in the same direction, playing on the same sheet of music, for my music folks here, it's amazing how everything else comes together as well. And when you're working as a team, it's so much better than going the other way. Going back to the Bible, I guess it talks about being unequally yoked, and that's a term when it comes to oxen or whatever, where one is up here and one is down here, and then you're pulling stress on the other head. So you guys seem to be equally yoked. You have goals, you have dreams, you're working together on the budget. Going back to the crazy fireworks stand guy, when you get those 2 months of teacher income or whatever in those 2 weeks, is that earmarked specifically for like a certain thing? That's our vacation fund or that's our Roth fund. How do you break that down? Or is it a percentage? Maybe 50% goes here, 30% goes there.
Um, it's kind of evolved over the years. When we first got married, it definitely like would kind of go down the list of like, um, you know, funding retirement, and then we always take a nice vacation after fireworks to treat ourselves for the hard work that we put in for the last 2 weeks. So that'd be part of it, and then I'm the spender in our relationship, so I'll usually have some trinket that I woodworking tool or something that I would like to spend some of the money on. And then the rest, I think, well, yeah, I mean, we have to save some for taxes. We always hold 25% of that just as a starting point for taxes, and then um, usually it works out that there was one year that we had to pay extra above that, but it was also because like investments and things came through. Um, but yeah, taxes, and then we also tithe 10% of that as well. Um, but now we just closed on 8 acres back in April. So now it's like, can we put in the driveway, or like, what I mean? It's going to be a little bit more spending allocated as we try to improve that property.
So there's no structure on the property.
No, it's just an open horse pasture right now.
Wow. So let's get into the real estate thing a little bit. You mentioned, this is your house, this is my house. And I was kind of the same way, Lauren, when I met my wife. She owned a townhouse over by White Oak High School. And like she basically told me, like, I'm not going to date or marry a renter. Like you need to buy a townhouse. So she convinced me. She convinced me to do it. And I was kind of that same way. Like, man, this is my baby. Like, this is my first house. I don't want some stranger living in my house. She's like, it's just four walls and a roof. She's like, wherever you live, that's your house. Like, you're never going to live in this house again. Who cares? Where for me, it was more of a different mindset. Now I've shifted. I don't even view my own personal house that us and the kids live in. Like, if somebody offered us, an X amount of dollars today and it was a great deal, like I'd move in a heartbeat because it's a business transaction or whatever. But you guys each owned a house. How were you able to, was your house, John, in Onslow County, or is it one that you had bought back home? And, Lauren, when did you buy your house with your teacher's salary?
So I owned a house in Elizabeth City. It was the FHA rural development loan is how I was able to get it. I only had to put like 3% down. So I was able to to make a tiny, like I think I made $5,000 when I sold that house. But then when I moved to Jacksonville, I followed Dave Ramsey's principle where he says rent for the first year and figure out where you actually want to live, and then buy a house. So I rented. I lived over in the Southwest area, and then the next year, I I think I still at the time because I was still building up my savings, recovering from paying off the debt and everything. I think I still did um, a non-conventional. I put some down. I don't remember what I put down, but that was before COVID, and so then the COVID real estate
Full bounce.
craziness happened, and we met. Well, we've known each other since college, and we reconnected when I moved down to Onslow County. She was actually teaching in Craven when we met, and we actually live here in New Bern. We moved into her house. But so when we got married, I I'd only lived in that. I lived like I think I closed 2 years to the day and qualified, for the personal house or personal residence exemption, and made like 50, or no, I think it was 80 grand because we took 30 of that and renovated the kitchen because the kitchen in this house was original. We just needed something a little different. So I made 80 grand off of that, and then put 50 in a brokerage account. And so that's what led to us being able to have the property. We really didn't put any more money into that account. It just grew to um, the to over $100,000, and we were able to buy the land.
So you paid cash for the 8 acres?
Yeah,
Wow. Now is the 8 acres Craven or Onslow County?
it's actually Jones.
Jones County. Okay. Okay. I
Yeah,
was
because yeah, we have a really strong church family here in the Trent Woods area. It's Garber Methodist. That's where we got married, and we also New Bern's just, no offense to Jacksonville, but New Bern's just a a nice place to live. Um,
no,
so
no offense taken.
the land is in Pollocksville, so it's kind of right
Okay.
between the two locations, and allows us to stay connected here in New Bern and make it a little bit shorter to Onslow to Jacksonville. But that's down the road. We're still living in New Bern for the foreseeable future.
All right. So Lauren, you have your house that you bought. And you convinced him to move into your house. He sold his. He made a pretty penny on it, which is been able to produce for paying cash for the acreage. What happens when you guys decide to make a move? I'm guessing living on that property. Are you in a position where you'd say, you know what? I think maybe we should rent my house out, or would you rather not have strangers living in the land that you've built here?
Well, it was sort of funny going back to what you were saying back to your wife. Like that was sort of our mentality too. Like I was very protective, so to speak, of my house because it was really for me the very first investment I had made. I had been renting an apartment and kind of setting aside money, and rent was going up at the apartment to the point where it really didn't make sense to rent anymore when I could have a place that was my own and invest in it and be able to get something out of it when I did need to sell. So about 10 years ago was when I bought my home here. And I did a lot of research trying to figure out just like what I could actually afford and what would be comparable to what I was paying in the apartment. And so that's what really led me to find a house that's kind of a starter home, but it worked really well for me as a single person. And then when we got married, it made sense for us to move here because I was teaching just around the corner from our house now. And his commute was only going to be about 35 minutes instead of 25. So it wasn't too much longer for him. But if we'd moved into his house, I would have had a 50-minute commute. So that's kind of how we ended up here. And I loved where I was. I didn't want anything to change. I loved everything about it. But he kind of wanted something that we could make ours and thought maybe our house was too small, especially with us having a desire to have children in the future, like just the need for something different. And it took a while of just those discussions about what we could afford or what we'd be comfortable with or where we might want to go, that then we kind of settled upon maybe Jones County being kind of that halfway point and being a place where maybe we could find land and maybe we should build something. And so those discussions sort of took shape. And then we really got the ball rolling this past summer, just looking more seriously at land and talking about what we financially could actually afford and what we really did need in a home, and a home not just as a place to stay but a place to raise a family or places for our families to visit or for us to host friends and for him to have his wood shop and those types of things. And so then we looked at several properties and just had to make the hard call not to go with it. We made some offers on a couple and got outbidded, and it was because I drew a very hard line in what I was willing to spend on something or go past. And it caused us to lose out on some, and one of them was not by much. It was like by $2,000 different, but it didn't seem like the right choice for us. And then we were very blessed in January that we found someone that was willing to parcel off 8 acres for us, actually. And we worked through that process and we're able to pay cash. So now we're to a point where we've paid cash for that, and the majority of those funds came from the sale of his house, and that fund that we had set up specifically earmarked for future house purchase, and we'd let it grow. And so we had those funds available to be able to pay cash on that. And then now it's a matter of talking through like our supplements, our fireworks income. When he does woodworking, we do some markets and things. And so like there's a little bit of income there. So talking through what we have coming in, and then the stages of what we need to do when for the property to then eventually build our house there, and being willing to wait for that.
And in
Yeah.
the meantime, are you guys are investing in Roth IRAs, each of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Is it
started,
a goal to max it out or
Uh, Sort of. Like I think we we were maxing it out for the first couple years, and then I dialed it back just a little bit when because I think because Dave Ramsey says 15% of your take home pay,
Mhm.
and we were by not maxing it out we were at 15%. So I didn't increase it to max it out, but I think we had decided going forward we probably will max it out just because we can, and
right.
why not?
And that's been one of the discussions we've had going back to like money differences and things, because I was encouraged from the start to start the Roth IRA, which I didn't do it my first year of teaching, but I did it my second year. And so it has been accumulating and growing substantially, honestly. It's amazing. But he had not done as much with it. And when we got married, he only had like
I,
uh,
I think I had like 8,000,
yeah, I
maybe
was thinking
10,000.
10,000. It wasn't a whole lot. And so that was one of the things we did that first year with fireworks money, was adding it to his. And then anytime that we could add some to kind of get him not caught up, but fund it more and then get consistent with it. So like monthly we'll save for both of our Roth IRAs. And that way we've got it set up and we've got it where every month something goes into it and it's growing for us.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And the house you're in now, will you wait to figure out what you're going to do with the land? Will you sell the house you're in and take the proceeds from that to use to build, or would you keep it as a rental property?
Yeah, that's our current plan, is to be able to sell this house, and our goal ultimately is to be able to live in it up until like the future home is actually constructed, we move in and then sell and then put back the proceeds from it.
Gotcha.
But that's where we have to be very careful in how we budget and how we plan and how we prepare. So we've been doing a lot of research on what home plans cost and what materials cost and what like we actually can afford. And then along those lines, being able to set aside the money so that while we have this house and we're building on the other house, whenever that happens, we've got enough money to do both and kind of planning for that.
Right on. So two North Carolina teachers here. As we wrap up, we're at about that time mark. Unfortunately, obviously you're not here to prescribe anything. Sometimes things work out in our favor, like with John and the double bounce of the COVID housing market, or it's that bouncy ball. The first bounce isn't that bad, but once it hits that second bounce, bam, it takes off. And that's what our real estate market has done here in Eastern North Carolina. And I know a lot of other places, but any advice or parting thoughts for other North Carolina teachers that might be listening to this show, maybe even for the first time?
I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like we were before we started the interview, we were talking about the pay and how, teachers don't get paid that much. And it's true. Like we're not paid for the time that we invest in the students and the children of North Carolina. But it's important not to be all caught up in the drama of that and sort of have that negative mindset of like, well, I can't do this because they don't pay me enough, and I can't, I won't ever be able to hit my financial goals just because I'm a teacher, and just kind of get hung up in all that negativity. Because, and again, like we have some things that are working well in our scenario, and I know a lot of people have more things that they struggle with financially and different burdens that they have. But it's very like, because even when I was single and I had my huge car payment, like once I got it together, I was able to pay off all that consumer debt and start working on savings. And it took a long time. It took, I think it took me three years to pay off my debt, and then right at the beginning of our marriage, I was just starting to turn a corner on savings and things like that. So it takes a while, but it can be done. And it, you really just kind of have to just, it's the same thing like with anything like weight loss or trying to learn an instrument. Like you have to have the mindset that you can do it, and you have to um, set those small goals for yourself and work towards the bigger goal of that, that financial independence and that financial understanding. um, so I guess that would be my parting words, is just don't get hung up in the negativity. Like, yes, we need to be paid more, but we really can do a lot with the little that we're given if we just have the wherewithal and the desire to do it.
Very good. Lauren, any parting words?
I would say definitely keeping a budget, knowing what your expenses are, but what's coming in and where everything is going does give you financial freedom. It doesn't restrict you, it just allows you to know that everything's taken care of. It's not a big nest egg of money that you don't know what you have at the end of the month, and it's not you're spending everything. So definitely budget. And then I would say there's two types of things, like starting small. So small goals, small investments, just every little bit does go a long way. It's never too late to start with that. And then just being able to kind of diversify where you can. So maybe you put some money away in Ally or another interest earning checking account. And maybe you don't have enough to put in a financial investment thing, or maybe you do Vanguard, but just putting it in different places where you can make some interest really does make a difference in the long run. And being able to kind of set it aside where you don't touch it, or it's there for like an emergency fund or something like that, that it's just earmarked and it's away. It helps you be very disciplined with the money that you actually have while saving and preparing for the future.
And I'm with you. I wish and I hope we all get paid more, for everybody out there. But one unique opportunity we have, financially independent teachers fit is one of the things that I think we do have as a benefit is those 2 months off in the summer. You guys have the 2 months off in the summer, and in those 2 weeks of those 2 months, you make 20% or so of what you make the entire year. So sure, we'd all love to just kick up our feet and be like a 12-year-old again and not do anything for, you know, 68 straight days or whatever. But if you can find some sort of a unique side hustle, whether it be woodworking or music lessons or a fireworks tent, whatever it is, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, you can use that time in the summer to make up those goals, to get the credit card paid off, to build up the emergency fund. And like John said, it doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but maybe the next 3 summers get you out of debt, and the next 2 summers get you to your fully funded emergency fund. And then the next summer gives you the 3.5% down so you can buy a house. It doesn't all happen overnight, but it's, just one foot in front of the other. You just have to keep moving. Friend of the show, Nancy, who I work with, always says, motion is lotion. You've got to keep your body moving. And when you do that, things seem to go a little smoother and there's not as much friction there. So just keep moving. I love your story, guys. I hope that you are willing to give us an update when you're multimillionaires here in the next decade.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you
All
for
right.
having us.
All right, guys. 2 North Carolina music teachers. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's version of Fit. We hope you join us for next week. And as always, be frugal, be fearless, and be a lifelong learner. Take care, everybody.